The Morning Inbox wonders if there'll be new DC Comics games at E3, as one reader hopes for a new Advance Wars on Switch. To join in with the discussions yourself, email gamecentral@acmetro.co.uk. Please note, the Game Central are away at a press event this afternoon, and so there will be no evening inbox today. Normal service will resume tomorrow. I think that reader is overthinking the "nobody asked for this" comments about Rage 2 and the other leaked games. For me at least, they just seem like odd choices. If they're good, I'll still be interested in getting them, but they don't seem like safe bets at all and show that companies would rather make literally any sequel rather than do something new. That said, I did like the Rage 2 trailer. The sense of humor seemed like it might grate after a while, but at least it had one, and I really liked the way the action was presented. The car chases look great, and are obviously why Avalanche have been brought on board. As was pointed out, the huge crowds of enemies, with cars still racing about between them, looked really cool. It's almost like what I'd imagine a post-apocalypse battlefield to be like. Although seeing all those enemies at once, I can't help but think of Battle Royale. I know they weren't all human players in the trailer, but what if they were in a different mode? That could be really something, and it'd get Bethesda out of this rut of great single-player games that nobody plays. Mentalist, so I'm still not clear on this. Is Metroid Prime 4 going to be at E3 or not? There doesn't seem to be any information on release dates or anything, and yet surely it is Nintendo's biggest announced game at the moment. I don't think they've even confirmed the rumors about the ex-LucasArts people making it yet, even though that seemed very positive. I worry that Metroid is in a similar situation to Star Fox and F-Zero. It's a tier above those, but it hasn't had a major hit in years, and if it has another failure, I fear that Nintendo are never going to bother with another big-budget version again. I guess that means I should be happy they're taking their time with it, but I really want to see what the game is now. This E3 better be good. Those leaks have not been very encouraging so far, but I'm holding out hope, and Star Fox Grand Prix sounds like it could be a good idea. Dennis the Menace RGC, it seems very unlikely to release this year, but we'd expect to see at least something of it at E3. We expect it'll just be a short teaser trailer though. As a Monster Hunter fan, I am just so happy at how big the series has finally become. I've been playing it for years, but I often feel like I'm almost the only one, and if it wasn't for the forums and fan communities, I literally would. Capcom has always been good about support for the games, so I hope they'll continue to please players and we can get an even bigger budget sequel. I'm not sure about the movie idea though. I know the idea of repeating the success of Resident Evil must seem a good idea to the bean counters, but to me those movies only cheapened the games, and they seemed to have a very negative influence on 5 and 6. Resident Evil 7 was nothing like any of them, and that's why it was great, so I'd hate to see them regress again. Or have Monster Hunter's Second Life cut short because of some dumb movies. Acura, email your comments to gamecentral@acmetro.co.uk. If we're assuming that anything Nintendo is going to announce at E3 is going to be mid or low budget, so they can get it out this year, can I evoke some inbox magic for a new Advance Wars? It seems very unlikely the new Fire Emblem is going to be out this year, so Intelligent Systems do have a window where they could work on a new Advance Wars. Since the game isn't really going to benefit from high-tech graphics, I'm imagining a low-priced eShop game, maybe £15 or so, that probably looks fairly basic but plays like the last Game DS game, but with a decent story this time. I don't see why this isn't feasible, and it might open a new way for Nintendo to bring back a lot of less popular franchises without having to turn them into something fans don't want. Sage. I never know how famous developers are with most gamers, but I was sad to see that Cliff Eaves' company has been shut down after the failure of Lawbreakers and Radical Heights. And if you haven't heard of them either, then, well, that's the problem really. I enjoyed them, but they were kind of half-stuck between old-fashioned arena shooters. Cliffy B worked on things like Unreal Tournament and Gears of War, and more modern hero shooters. As always seems to happen in that kind of situation, they fell between the two stools and didn't interest either side. This seems to happen quite a bit with developers who leave a company after being famous and then just kind of fade away. Ever remember David Jaffe, who used to be the face of God of War? This tells me two things: 1, nobody buys a game because of who's making it, at least in terms of just individual people, and 2, individuals probably don't have as much influence on the quality of a game as they like to think. I'm sure Cliffy B is very talented, but without the whole team at Epic Games he obviously lost some of his mojo. I mean, after he left they came up with Fortnite, which is much bigger than anything he ever worked on. I'm not trying to diss the guy, but suggest that the team is always going to be important than an individual, and that's one reason why developers will never become celebrities in the long term. Gareth: wow, that was my reaction once I saw a message on my PlayStation 4 home screen informing me that an update 443 megabytes in size is currently being downloaded for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Could it be that Capcom and Marvel have finally stopped their bizarre radio silence about the game, which has been going on since the launch of the DLC characters, Venom, etc.? Alas, my initial excitement was quickly put to an end, as the notes in the console suggests it was just a system change or something along those lines. After playing a few rounds, nothing seems to be different. Just as I've just recovered from mourning the quick demise of this fun game, that Capcom decide to do this. Why would they release an update patch so suddenly after a long stretch of absolute silence? I really hope that it's an indication that they are looking at the game again. E3 is just around the corner, or is this just wishful thinking? Has GC heard anything in the rumor mill to suggest any hope of future content for the game? That any guide GC, the major change was removing the Denuvo DRM from the PC version. The suggestions we've heard is that it's just house cleaning and is intended as the final update. We'd love to see some announcements to disprove that at E3, but if you don't, then we think that's it for the game. I'm sure I know the answer to this already, but is there any chance that they are going to unveil a new Mass Effect at E3? I know Casey Hudson is back at BioWare now, and keen to make amends for Andromeda, which he had nothing to do with, but how long is going to be till he can get a new game underway? Andromeda itself seemed to take an unusually long time, especially given the end result, so I'm worried we won't see anything for probably at least 3 years. Considering Mass Effect 3 was in 2012, that is a long time to wait for a proper follow-up. Although I suppose the good news is at least we're getting one. I wasn't even sure about that at first. XP Master GC, there's always a chance, especially as there have been no major leaks for Maya yet. But honestly, we wouldn't expect anything this year. Catch up on every previous game's inbox here GC. Do you think the C3 will finally see what Rocksteady has been working on since Batman: Arkham Knight? Someone mentioned something the other week about a multiplayer game, but I thought they were meant to be working on a Superman or Justice League game? I guess the failure of the DCEU might have changed those plans. That'll teach them for not going with Wonder Woman, but surely that's the obvious way to go now. With the guys who did Arkham Origins continuing to make Batman games in the old style? Like yourselves, I've always been a fan of DC over Marvel, even though I enjoy both, and it seemed a few years ago that DC at least had the lead on Marvel in terms of games. But, just like in the movies, they seemed to have squandered that lead, and now this year we're going to have the Avengers game, Spider-Man, and there's a Guardians of the Galaxy 1 on the way too. And what have DC got? Zilch. I know the stories about cancelled games and such, but not managing to put out any games other than the Arkham games and Injustice just seems like bad management to me. Again, just like the movies. Sometimes I think DC must secretly be run by Marvel. Mezzo GC, Warner Brothers are one of the big unknowns for this year. They have a fair-sized stand but no announced games, and yet the only thing from the Walmart leak was LEGO DC Supervillains. They're overdue a number of announcements, but the only one there's been any real hint of so far is Mortal Kombat 11. Am I the only person that enjoyed the original Rage? I quite enjoyed Fuel 2. Maybe I'm just odd. Old Miley, PSNID, GC, we don't think anyone actively dislikes Rage. Most are apathetic or have never heard of it. Rogue. Oh, aliens in Bloodborne? Didn't you go in the woods? And the octopus thing that fired lasers. Alan Smith GC, whether they're aliens or not is very open to interpretation. The sky and the cosmos are one, after all. The subject for this weekend's inbox was suggested by Reader Memo, who asks if you could own one arcade cabinet, what would it be? Video game arcades may be all but dead nowadays, but the collector's market is still thriving. So if money, and the space to keep it, I wasn't a concern, what coin-op machine would you most want to own? How much is your choice due to your love of the game itself and how much the nostalgia of playing it originally? Have you ever considered buying a cabinet? For real, and what put you off if you didn't? How do you think arcade games compare to modern titles, and do you think there's still a place for them? Email your comments to gamecentral@metro.co.uk. The small print new inbox updates appear twice daily, every weekday morning and afternoon. Readers' letters are used on merit and may be edited for length. You can also submit your own 500 to 600 word 4-player viewer features at any time, which if used will be shown in the next available weekend slot. If you need quick access to the Game Central channel page, please use www.metro.co.uk/games and don't forget to follow us on Twitter.